Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I'm Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. In this episode, we're basically going to be looking back at the season so far for Fulham Football Club, and we're going to do it in an interesting way. And this show is entitled, Do You Think Fulham Are in a False Position in the Table? We're about to come out of the international break, and Fulham are currently 7th and doing very well. But could they have more points? Could they potentially have less points? Are they where they should be? So that's what Tony and I are going to be discussing in this episode for about an hour. If you're watching live, please feel free to share your thoughts on the show. I actually put out a poll and a question, and I had some really good comments on it. So I know supporters are interested in this topic. Are they in a false position? And I actually think that they are. So we're going to talk about that coming up next. Before I go to Tony, I just want to mention please check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. This is something that I launched back in September, and we're doing some very interesting stuff on there. Tony and I actually do a player rating show. I do a preview show. All of this content is on the Cottage Talk Patreon page for paid members. Please do check it out. I think you will really like what we're doing. This show and many shows like the Cottage Talk post-match show are free, but if you want extra content of Cottage Talk, please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Okay, my friend, let's get started. Give me your opening thoughts on the topic at hand. You and I have talked a lot about it. I'll share my thoughts next. Are Fulham in a false position, Tony? We're going to go through all the matches. We're going to analyze it, but just your opening thoughts.
They say the table never lies, Russ. So I think when you look at the table and where we are at the moment, which is, a very healthy 7th, I would say that over the 11 games that we've had, and the results that we've managed, I would say it's probably a fair reflection. You can always look back on games and think, well, we dropped a point here and we dropped a point there, and that's very true given some of the games that Fulham have been involved in this season. But that's something that they have to work on as a collective. That's something that Silva has to improve on as a manager and get a bit more consistency in games where either we are comfortable, or we create chances, and we've got to be a little bit more clinical at both ends of the park, not just in front of goal, but also defensively. And we've spoken a lot about collectively as a defence, where I believe we can be a little bit tighter, a little bit sharper, a little bit more ruthless. But yeah, look, there's 3 games that stick out for me that had we picked up an extra 5 points from those 3 games, we would be on level points with Manchester City at the moment. That's in 3rd or 4th place. So it's fine margins, Russell. It's fine margins, and the Premier League, it's always been like that. And so, yeah, had we got those points and not thrown, the game away against West Ham and Everton, and then got a point at Old Trafford, we'd be sitting 3rd, literally. And that's the fine margins.
Totally agree, Tony. And if you look at the flip side, that's why we're going to go through all the matches and we're going to analyze. We're not going to spend a lot of time on each match, but just to basically give us a refresher and be honest, should Fulham have gotten more points from this match, all of them, or should they actually have not gotten anything from a match? There's one that stands out that I really want to talk about, the Ipswich Town match. There's an argument that maybe we shouldn't have gotten anything from that. So let's go through all of them. But before we do that, I want to just share some comments. We get this from Gary Cooper. We should be higher. He follows that up. West Ham, Everton, but Europa League, here we come. Well, we'll see about that, my friend. Who knows? You never know. All right. So before we move on, I'm going to share my thoughts. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because saying the table doesn't lie is pretty accurate. It really is. It basically tells you where you are. It's usually a pretty honest assessment. So on the face of it, I understand where you're coming on. But my thoughts are, and we'll go through this, that if I look at it, coulda, shoulda, woulda, there are too many coulda, shoulda, wouldas. That's why I think they should be higher up the table. They should have more points, Tony. Like I said, we're going to balance it. We'll talk about where maybe they should have gotten points. But I think if you look at it overall, they should have more points and they should be higher up the table. But the way also to look at it is the way that you presented it. The table doesn't lie, and that's a good way to look at it. The eternal optimist. So I'm looking at what they could have done and thinking they did this, this is where we would be. And like you said, if we got all those points, we would be third at this point, which is crazy to say, Tony, but it is what it is. Let's see. This is from our friend Claire Green. She says, if buts, maybes, need to close games out. Let's look forward, not back. Claire, I understand that. We are in a way going to be looking forward at the end of the show, but I thought this is a good way to review it and look at where we are. I totally understand where you're coming from, that we need to look forward. We will do that, but I want to review the season. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for joining Tony and myself, because like I said, we are going to spend some time going backwards, but we will then end going forwards, because that's the ultimate. We want to see where Fulham can go, and that's where Tony will and I will end this show. And please stick around to hear everything. So let's get to it, Tony. Let's start with the first match of the season. And I got to tell you, this one really disappointed me, because Fulham played very well. But I think what we saw here are some of the growing pains of Fulham Football Club going to Old Trafford. And they just could not basically put the ball in the back of the net. And they looked dangerous, but they could not put it all together. It looked like a team that was still trying to figure stuff out. So I think they should have gotten at least a point out of this. But I think this also was also a precursor to some of the ups and downs we're going to be talking about, because you can make the argument that they should have gotten something from this, but it was also a team starting out, coming together. So I want to get your thoughts on the Manchester United loss, because I think you can make an argument they should have got a draw.
Yeah, I think you've got to remember, first game of the season's always a tough one. And I think, remember, we were the first game on a Friday night. So that's always a different ambience, a different feel. It's not like a Saturday afternoon. It's a completely different environment. Also, you've got to remember, Anderson didn't play in that game. We had Diop at the back with Bassi, and Muniz played up front.
Right.
And I think if Raul would have played, then it may have been different. But again, all ifs, buts, and maybes. The bottom line is the statistics will tell you over the course of the game that Manchester United had more shots on target, more possession, passed the ball better. But I think we had probably 2 shots in the whole game, and they were probably clear cut in that regard. But I think it was the manner in which we conceded the goal in, I think, the 87th minute that hurt, because actually, had we got a point from that game, it would have been a really good point, given that everything was pretty much against us on the night. So that's why that one hurt, because a point at Old Trafford, first game of the season, you take that all day long.
Right. It definitely hurt, Tony, in the manner that it came about, because that could have been the launching point from that point on, right? And then we'll talk about what happened after that. But that's one to look at. Like you said, it's the first match of the season. So in a way, you could understand them losing that match, but it was just disappointing in the manner that it happened. I totally agree with that. Okay. This is from Colm Bugler. I just want to say where we are after a fairly difficult set of fixtures in December. We could be higher, but that's not to say I'm unhappy with our current position. He's right about that, because we have a very difficult list of fixtures coming up. And I think that will be a real sign of where this club is going, is going through those matches. But I'm looking forward to that, because I think that will be a true test. But if you look at where we are right now, I don't think it could be unhappy. What are your thoughts about the upcoming fixtures? Are you feeling so?
No, well, going back to Claire's point before, when she said about looking forward, I think, for me, the fixtures that we have, and what Colm's, alluded to there, is that we have some big fixtures in December: Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham. For me, that is where we need to be looking at, and that's where Fulham need to be performing, to see whether or not they really have turned that corner. So I think what Claire says about that is she's absolutely right. We've got to look forward, and we've got to make sure that we are right and fully prepared for those games and get the results that we need to push on, because it's very easy to not get those results and suddenly drop off, and then it's a very different picture.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, let's move on to the Leicester City match, Tony. And again, early season, I think it was just important to get a victory. What are your thoughts about this match? We don't have to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, no, listen, it was a good result. I think, Smith Rowe scored his first goal for us, so that was always nice. It's a game I expected us to win. It wasn't easy, but again, if you look at the stats over the course of the game, we dominated possession, dominated shots, dominated passing, and we were definitely the better side. And again, another game that Anderson didn't play.
Yep.
So but we didn't keep the clean sheet, but we got the result.
Okay. And I would agree with your assessment on that. Let's now move on to the Ipswich Town match. This one's a little bit different because I think this is the one where we can really look at, and I've seen the argument from obviously Ipswich Town supporters that they felt that they should have gotten more from this. They should have won the match. I don't know if I agree with that because I think a lot goes to how you felt at the end of the match, how Ipswich Town really were pouring the pressure on at the end. So I think that's why some think that Fulham don't deserve anything from this. I'm going to make the argument that they actually got what they deserve. What are your thoughts about this one?
Yeah, listen, as people have seen, Ipswich are no mugs. You saw that when they went to Tottenham and got a result. We went there, they were buzzing. They took the lead. Great goal by Delat, and we needed to up our tempo, up our levels, which we did in the end, and managed to get a good result, which was a good point given that I don't think we played particularly well on the day. So yeah, that was a decent point.
Okay, let's now move to the draw against West Ham. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, yeah, I mean that was the first proper frustration in terms of performance, because it's a game that when we went into it and the way that West Ham were playing, you kind of felt that great opportunity to get another really good 3 points and to push on, and then we didn't. It just didn't quite happen on the day. And as the 1-1 draw, very frustrating. We threw it away at the end because we just we have a habit of doing that at times, and that's when I said when you need to change the leaf, it's about us being ruthless defensively and stop giving away these poor goals, because you come away with a 1-0 win and a clean sheet, it's a great 3 points and everybody's happy. But that was the first blip, and then you're looking at it, well, 2 points dropped, and you're thinking, right, next game now we've got to pick it up again and get a result.
Okay, very good there, my friend. It's funny because this is the one that really stood out for me as a missed opportunity. I'm glad that we're talking about the West Ham match because I'm just thinking this is where I'm thinking Fulham need to just do better, and where I think they progressed since then. We're going to talk about the Everton match, which is similar, but this is the first inkling that they're just not putting it all together. So I actually think that obviously these are 2 points dropped, and one that we might look back at and thinking this is where we coulda, shoulda, woulda.
That 2 points could have been, that could be crucial come the end of the season. But again,
I know that's what I'm saying.
95th minute equaliser.
I know
we've had 21 shots in the game, and we've scored 1 goal. And that for me is what Silva needs to convert. If you can convert some of those shots into goals, you'll be winning games by 2 or 3. That's the difference.
Yeah. I want to go back to this because this has been an argument. It was our throw-in from Black and White Fred. I want to get your thoughts on that. Were you were there for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was absolutely, he's right, obviously, but you've still got to, decisions go against you all the time, right? And that's football. There's still a phase of play to defend and manage before the ball hits the back of the net, and we didn't do that, like we didn't do it against Everton. So it's it's something that we have to improve on as a group if we want to move forward.
Okay, very good. I'm going to share some more comments I just did from our friend Colin Bugler. This is from Ross. He says, West Ham game really sticks in my throat. I think that sticks with most supporters. I totally agree with you on that, Ross. This is from another supporter. Says, we haven't even clicked yet, I feel. Think we're about to really get in the groove. Wilson adds movement in the box, which is what we need. Now, that's an interesting little take there. Tony, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't think we've clicked yet. I'm glad that he brought that up, or she, I should say. I'm not exactly sure. But I just wanted to say that I don't know if we have clicked yet. I think that there's still room to grow. And I do think that the emergence of Wilson can only help Fulham. Well, what are your thoughts?
I think the Brentford game has given us an extra step, given all the players an extra step because of what happened, and then obviously the performance against Palace, was so dominating that actually it's just a shame the international breaks come along when it did, because you kind of lose that momentum. And now you're going back into the Wolves game on Saturday, and the boys have had a rest. Some players haven't had a rest. Some players have been flying all over the place, and you just don't know what they're going to come back. Are they going to be leggy? Are they going to be tired? Are they going to be, and it's just a shame that bloody international break came at the time that it did, because if we didn't have that break straight into Wolves game on Saturday, we're on a roll and we're flying.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they are on Saturday. And make no bones about it, it's a game I expect us to win, and win comfortably. It won't be easy, obviously, but I expect us to win no matter what.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right. I want to share this because this is the first Goldman for the show. Maybe not the first one, but this is a comment. I said, Russ, I'm Kamal's brother. Met you in Philly. Definitely a he. So there you go on that. So there's a Goldman, and please tell your brother my mistake there. That's pretty funny. And it's funny. I just talked to Kamal the other day. Okay. Let's see what else we got from Wayne here. He says, every game we play, the squad is getting stronger 100%. I totally agree. And that's why we're doing the show, because we're looking back at where they are and where they can go. Let's talk about a match that I think we don't talk enough about, Tony. I know we have already, but I think this is a signature victory, beating Newcastle United. It's still a team that has invested so much money with quality, and Fulham destroyed them, Tony. I think that we need to give Fulham more credit for this victory. I want to get your thoughts on beating Newcastle United.
Yeah, well, given that the last couple of seasons they've been a real bogey team for us for whatever reason, to put in that performance, and on the day actually Newcastle dominated possession, but what the difference was is that we were ruthless in front of goal, and it was a very good result. Make no doubt about it. It was a great result given what they done to us over the last couple of seasons, and I think that performance gave the players the belief that actually they can turn up and they don't have to fear teams. As long as Silva gets them organised and they turn up and play to their potential, I don't think there's a team that we need to fear. Honestly,
that's my point, man.
I really don't. And that showed that against Newcastle, like I said, because that hasn't been an easy fixture for us.
I think that was a major turning point for me. Early turning point in the season, because it showed that if they can beat Newcastle United, I know it's at home, they can pretty much beat anyone. That's what I was looking into it. I think that's also why the West Ham draw really ticked me off, Tony, because I thought they were the better side than West Ham. And that to me was going to be the signature win early. It turned out to be Newcastle United. It should have been the West Ham match, if you understand where I'm going on that.
Yeah.
So, but what we're seeing here is a progression. So now let's go on to the Nottingham Forest match on the road. I think this is massive because Nottingham Forest were set up to stop Fulham, and they were at home. That actually surprised me, the way that they set up. Now, I understand they were dealing with injuries and the suspension to Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm not giving them a pass on that. I think their manager overthought things to try to stop Fulham from playing, and it played into our hands. So this, to me, is a quality win on the road and a well-deserved win. Your thoughts?
For me, so it's the performance of the season so far. It's that simple. Well, you can see how well they've been doing. Nuno's obviously got them very well organised, and they've been getting some very, very good results. To go there and to keep a clean sheet and to win the game was a very, very, very good result. And so for me, so far, that has been our result of the season.
Okay, very good there too. Let's move on. Let's now talk about, I can't believe we're going to talk about it in this way, a disappointing loss to Manchester City. Let's talk about this. You and I were basically ramping up to this. And I remember you saying to me before a show, hey, this is the best chance Fulham have to actually beat Manchester City. It really was looking like that going into it. And then you watch the match and you see how Fulham were set up. And Tony, it's funny because I also think that you also saw a shift that started, I think, back here when you have the situation with Adama Traore, who's playing very well. But we've said this several times. Adama Traore, if he could finish, he wouldn't be on full. So we kind of saw that in this match. But I think it also started the process to us now seeing what is going on now with Reece Nelson. I think this is where it might have started. Nothing against Adama because he gives you 100% every time he's out there. It's just his finishing is just not good enough. And I think that's what was unfortunately the difference. But you know what? They still played so well in this match. I don't know if we can make a strong argument that they should have won it, but I think we can make an argument that they should have gotten something from it.
It's the hope that kills you, Russ.
I know you.
And this was the game where that where that saying actually fits like a glove. Look, when we take the lead through Pereira, you're thinking this is going to be the day we're going to go to the Etihad and get a result, for the first time in years, and it's going to be amazing. And then obviously they hit back with Kovacic, who hits two absolute worldies, and then obviously Traore with the chances that he had in that game, and that's why you're thinking at the end, oh, if only. Yeah. But if you look at the match stats at the end, actually Manchester City were pretty dominant, and it was only because of those misses that you kind of thought the game was a lot closer than probably it actually was.
Right.
And yeah, of course, look, if Traore takes those chances, it may well have been a different game, but it wasn't. And again, this is, we still conceded 3 goals. Defensively, we weren't good enough on the day. And again, if you look back on the 3 goals that we conceded, they weren't good enough, apart from maybe one, which you could give them. The other 2 were pretty poor. So, it's, it was, we weren't expected to go to the Etihad and get a result. That's the bottom line. So we didn't. So it was a free hit for us really that weekend.
Okay. I'm going to share some more comments just about subjects in general. This is from our friend Colin Bugler. He says, I think we need to be looking at a new left back as I've got a bad feeling Robinson might be off in January. Hopefully I'm wrong. And Kamal's brother says, no chance Robinson goes in January unless someone pays some silly money, probably the summer. I think probably the summer. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think someone's going to offer silly money this January?
I hope Calm's wrong. I don't see him going in January. I think it will be a major blow if we lose him in January. Major blow. And I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but it will be. And you're not selling him for anything less than 80 million, Russ. That's the bottom line.
You and I have talked about it.
He is one of the best left backs in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. That is a fact.
Yeah,
and so look, I know Liverpool, are very keen and sniffing, and but Silva has got to do everything in his power to make sure that does not happen. Obviously, the summer's different because it's you're starting afresh and anything can happen. But we cannot afford. Look, we've lost Mitrovic, we've lost Polinia. We cannot keep affording to lose our stronger players. Otherwise, we're never gonna move forward. That's the bottom line.
That's the point.
To keep these players.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you and I are talking about this. That's what drives me crazy, is that we're so accustomed to a bigger club just taking all of our players. Why should us as supporters just say, nah, that's okay. That's okay, because we're going to get a lot of money from it. F that. We should be holding the club to the fire and say, no, do not sell Anthony Robinson. Do not sell our best players. Let's build something. How can you effectively build something if you get rid of all of your best players? You just keep on playing catch up. It will eventually catch up to Brighton. People don't believe me, but I truly believe that. It caught up to Leicester City. It caught up to a lot of clubs. So I think eventually you can do it for a while if you're smart like Brighton is. Brighton's smart, but eventually it can come back to bite you. I do want to share this comment from our friend Ross is if we don't try to get Nelson in January, it would be madness. The boy is class. You and I have talked about it, Tony. Go to Arsenal and say, what is your price? And just get it done. I would do it at this point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Ross is bang on. That's the first thing we have to do in January.
First thing.
That's it. Get it done. Get the deal done. Get it over the line. Get him in. He is class. He's obviously there's things he needs to work on, like his finishing. But that's what they'll do at training, and that's what, if he gets across, that's what they'll do with him. And if he can add goals to his game and become a finisher, then he's another class player that we've got.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just going to share this comment. It's about ESR change the culture. Now, what's interesting about that comment, I want to get your thoughts on it, because it's good that we're sharing the comments from the supporters as we're doing the show, because it brings context as we keep going throughout the season so far, Tony. I've said to you so many times that I think getting Emil Smith-Rowe has changed Fulham. So the culture change, I do agree with. And I don't even think he's even, I don't know, 50% of what he could potentially be with Fulham. That's what's exciting. I want to get your thoughts about our friend here's comment that he changed the culture.
When you bring better players into a football club, it's going to change the culture. It's going to change the mindset, because suddenly, you're a player at a certain level, and suddenly you'll come in, you're in the same team of a player that's come from a bigger side, a better side. Let's be honest. And you're looking at him, and technically he's better in every department. Absolutely, he has improved our team tenfold. When you think about when Pereira was playing in there and what you're getting now from Smith-Rowe, it's like chalk and cheese, right?
Yeah.
The thing with Smith-Rowe, if he can get his attitude right, and if he can bring consistency to his performances week in, week out, he will be an absolute game changer for us in the big games and the big moments where in previous years we haven't quite got there, we haven't quite done it, we've just fallen short. He will be the difference, and he's already shown it this year, Russ. He's already shown it. I think Silva sat down with him after maybe the Villa game, and basically, look, they probably had a chat and said, look, Emil, I need you to start working a little bit harder for the team. I need you to start giving us a little bit more defensively, because I don't think you're going through the motions. And to be fair to him, Brentford, Palace, absolutely outstanding.
Okay. And I would agree with that. And that's what's fascinating, because I'm glad that you talked about this. I think the big statement for him, 2 matches coming up. I know we have the match against Wolves. I have Tottenham and Arsenal coming up, thinking this is where that guy needs to show himself. He's a former Arsenal player. He's going to want to go at Tottenham Hotspur. That's a chance to really show himself. And then his old club, come on. That, to me, I think is a fascinating match. I can't wait till we talk about the Arsenal match with all the former Arsenal players. That is going to be fascinating, my friend. That's going to be a lot of fun.
And let me tell you, they've missed him. They've missed him big time.
They totally have, especially with Odegaard's injury. They screwed that up by letting him go to us, and I really don't care, to be honest with you. But they have totally missed him. I want to share this comment from Dean. He says, for Silva, the squad has locked in stage by stage. The competition for starting positions is red hot now, with really only Lukic out injured. And that's a great point, Tony, because we're going to go through at the end of the show. We're going to talk about where I think Fulham need to improve, especially when we get to January. But the situation that you and I talked about, we were talking about, well, they need more depth. They need to have more depth coming off of the bench. But I think they're proving, at least me, Ron, that maybe they have a lot of depth in several positions. They still need depth in a very important position. But beyond that, look at the competition for positions. That's why I think you're getting the situation with Harry Wilson. You and I talked about it. I think the competition that is really just driving players to show us these performances. Harry Wilson right now wants to play. How is he going to do that, Tony? He has to play well when he gets that opportunity. And he's running with it.
Yeah, listen, Silva's going to have a major headache when Lukic is back fit. That's for sure. But that's the kind of headaches you want our manager to have, Russ. You want him to have these headaches every week. You want players to be pushed. You want that competition. And he's absolutely right. We've got good competition, certainly in wide areas. And everyone vying for a spot and place. And he's also got the comfort now of being able to rotate players to give them a rest, because you're not weakening a certain position, like he's done with Traore over the last couple of games. He's dropped him out. Reece Nelson goes in there. It hasn't weakened us. If anything, it's maybe made us stronger in certain areas. So I think that you want those headaches. You've got to have a strong squad. And look, Wilson, he's done brilliantly, to be fair. But in my opinion, he's still that player that you want to come off the bench. He doesn't start for me. He is that player that comes off, and he seems to be relishing in that role at the moment. So long may it continue.
Okay. We have an interesting little comments going back and forth between my friend Steve Reynolds and Kamal's brother Suhail, and I hope I'm saying that right, Suhail. This is Steve. He says, you have ESR, Lukic, and AP. Who plays where? Then followed up with my friend here says, Lukic at 6 and ESR at 10. AP is the square peg in the round hole. I know how you feel about this, my friend. He is the square peg in the round hole. What do we do about this situation when Lukic is healthy? You got Berger playing well too. It's still going to be the Pereira thing that's going to go around and around and around, my friend.
Pereira's the one that comes out, Russ. It's as simple as that. Because he's the one at the moment that isn't doing enough. If you go through every single player, there's an argument to say he's done enough, he's done enough, he's done enough, he's done enough. Pereira's the one. He's absolutely right. He's the round hole, square peg in a round hole. And once everyone's back fit, it's got to be Lukic and Berger. But look, at the moment, you don't want to change a winning team. So at the moment, Pereira is part of that winning team, and so he's contributing something. So you got to roll with it at the moment.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I really want to see what the Lukic, Berger, and Smith Rowe trio looks like. But I agree with you.
I think we'll come unstuck against the Chelsea's, Tottenham, and Arsenal with those three in midfield. I do. I really do. I think that's where you'll see us get hurt. I hope I'm wrong, but that's where I see us having a problem.
Okay, so then you're thinking, would you then have Pereira in that situation?
No, I would take Pereira out and put Lukic in. But obviously, Lukic now, he hasn't. He's obviously not going to be match fit. He's come back from an injury. He's going to have to get back up to speed again. It's like where Berger was several weeks ago. He needed games, and now that he's getting games, you're seeing a different player.
Okay, so for you, what would be the best situation when we are playing the Chelseas in that midfield three? What would you do?
Lukic, Berger, and Smith Rowe all day long.
Okay, I agree with you. Do you think that those three can handle it?
100%.
Okay, and I agree with you on that. I totally agree with you. Okay, so now let's talk about the Aston Villa loss. And this one's disappointing, Tony, on many levels. You're coming back from the international break. You got the injury to Lukic, which I think really threw Fulham for, a loss. Just to use another word in there, there's probably a better word to describe it, but it definitely set them back, not having Lukic in there. Now you're moving Berger into that position against a very quality midfield. I mean, real quality midfield. And I don't think he was ready for that situation. I don't think he had enough time to prepare. I'm talking about Berger and also Silva to really get him to where he is now. And I think that was also part of the problem. That it's not an excuse, but I'm just trying to say I think that's a factor in why our midfield really got destroyed by Aston Villa. But Aston Villa is a quality side. Let's give them credit. So what do you make of this situation against Aston Villa? I know we always go back to who took the penalty, but I think it goes beyond that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, it was just a horrible game. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong on that particular day. It's just one of those games. Probably our worst game of the season, to be honest. Just with everything that happened, the penalty miss, the sending off, just everything. And against Villa, you can't be that. You can't have those things go that wrong, because they are a team that can punish you, and they did, and it's as simple as that. But actually, it probably wasn't a bad thing. I know that sounds mad, but
no,
I don't think it was a bad thing to happen, because it kept the players grounded. It made them realise that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I think actually Silva found out a lot about that group after that particular result. I really do.
It's interesting that you put it that way, Tony. And I've got our co-host here, Emilio, chiming in. Lost to Villa, we should have been 2-1 up, and outcome would have been different. He could end up being right. But if you look back at it and you think about it, you brought up a great way to look at this. I think to make change, sometimes you have to go through adversity. And they went through this, and now you're seeing the fruits of the labor of going through a difficult patch. This was difficult. and they've come through it. Now they're going to have difficult matches coming up, but I think it shows how far they've come that they could deal with a loss to Aston Villa, because I think many clubs would have kept going down. They actually started going back up. So that to me is something to really take positively out of it. Out of a bad loss, they actually came out of it okay, and probably it got their asses in gear moving forward. Now, again, let's now go on to the Everton match, because even though this is a draw and we saw the same thing happen again that happened against West Ham, this was a little bit different. They went to Goodison Park and dominated. And I thought for such long spells of the match, Everton couldn't do anything, Tony. They didn't deserve anything from this. You and I know this. We've talked about this. This one infuriated me, but it also gave me hope, because I'm thinking they're going to Goodison Park. They're dominating the play. And this happens in the Premier League when you don't get that second goal. This is what happens, because they're a good side, and we left them wide open for someone to come off the bench and get the equalizer. They didn't deserve that. You and I know that. But there are a lot of good things to come out of this. Again, and maybe some more lessons have been learned since then. What do you take from the draw against Everton? This is 2 points drop, but I think there's more to talk about in regards to it.
Yeah, I think for me it was about bounce back ability after the Villa performance, and to go to, Goodison Park and put in that performance of complete domination showed good character for the group of players that we've now got, and that was for me a shift in a mentality. Obviously, the disappointment of the day was the fact that we conceded the goal again in the 94th minute, very late. And the manner in which it was, conceded. But again, as long as they learn from it, and, I believe that they are learning from it, and they just have to make sure that they are stronger in those areas. Silva needs to look at the changes that he makes, and maybe has to be a little bit braver in those moments. Changing a team sometimes isn't always the right thing to do. You want to bring on an extra defender. I can understand why, but by doing that, you're throwing in a player that's, cold, hasn't got into the flow of the game, and sometimes it doesn't always, work out. And in this particular instance, it didn't. So, it's one of those. But look, at the end of the day, yeah, it was 2 points drop, but it was a good performance coming back from a defeat.
Okay. I want to share this comment here from Emilio Port. Tactical and pointless subs by Marco. Everyone does make mistakes, including Marco and Emilio. We, as you've been on several times, we think that he's a genius, or I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but we obviously think very highly of him. But even he makes mistakes, and we talk about that all the time. And I agree with you, very much agree with you on that. Okay, so let's move on. Let's now go to the Brentford match. Now, this to me is key, Tony, and what really got me about this is I think this match shows the resolve. This shows the fight. This shows a team that does not give up against a team that puts every player behind the ball and tries to see a match out and gives us a sucker punch. And it was a sucker punch, gets the lead, and Fulham struggle to break them down, but they kept going and going and going. And this victory is important twofold. One, because they beat Brentford. That's number one. I think that's important. You want to beat Brentford every single time. You want to beat them. And I cannot stand that team at all. I can't stand their supporters. So this was sweet to win. But I think what's even better is how they did it, because I think this they can use for matches to come. To that resolve to score 2 goals late, huge credit to Harry Wilson, but it wasn't just Harry Wilson. It was Jedi. It was basically a team effort not to give up and to score 2 goals late. The victory against Brentford, we already talked about how important the Newcastle United match was, basically a signature win. But this was such an important win on many levels.
Huge. I have never seen Fulham dominate a game and a team like they did on that night. It was, Brentford got absolutely battered in possession. I mean, it was an utter demolition job. And how we didn't end up finishing, winning that game by a country mile is anybody's, guess. But look, at the end of the day, the players, I mean, that night was special. It was just a special night. The atmosphere was unbelievable. The manner in which obviously we equalised and then the manner in which we won the game was just unbelievable. And that for me was a big turning point in terms of it showed that Silva has definitely tweaked something with these players in terms of their mentality. It's this fight, it's the confidence, it's the ability to keep going, never give up. And yeah, Brentford made it very difficult on the night. Absolutely. Frank, to be fair to him, he almost, pulled off a robbery, by sticking the team behind the ball, and we just could not break them down. But then, as I said, we kept going, and eventually, we got what we deserved, and that was a result that absolutely we deserved. 100%. Great night.
Totally agree. And I'm going to share some comments about this. We're going to talk about it. This is from our friend Black, White, and Fred. Kind of hard to take Brentford playing the deepest block known to men as a compliment. Basically, not to take it as a compliment. It is a huge compliment. Sorry, there's a Goldman for you, Black, White, and Fred. It's a huge compliment. And I'll go back to, we just talked about Nuno at Nottingham Forest. Again, worried about Fulham. These teams now are worried about Fulham. This is a huge compliment, and it shows how far Fulham have come. I'm telling you, Tony, like you said, you've not seen a dominant performance like that at the Cottage. That, to me, just tells you the direction that they're going. This is from Sohail. He always says, to be fair, Brentford was anti-football at the Cottage. Awful to watch. I would agree with that. And I have to share this from our friend Ross. He says, Brentford came with a plan and it backfired. Screw them. Bus stop a-holes. I'm there with you. Emilio wants to chime in. And this is a good point. I'm glad that Emilio brought this to the table. Fabio almost nicked it. Top save by Leno. I totally agree with that. And you and I talked about this, Tony, on the show after the match. Could you imagine if he actually scored that goal?
No, it would have been absolutely horrendous. And I'll tell you why, because he got so much stick before he came onto the pitch. And that would have been, honestly, that would have been the most horrendous moment. Honestly, it would have been. But yeah, look, Emilio's right. It was a great save. But like I said, look, at the end of the day, they were awful to watch. We were fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
And, our play in front of their 18-yard box, moving it from left to right, being patient with the ball, looking for our openings, putting balls into the box. I mean, we did everything, literally everything. And if we'd won that game 4-5, it would have been a very, very fair reflection on the performance. It really would have done.
Right. And I just want to share this from Emilio. He says, it's one of my top 10 games to watch live, over 700 games. That's absolutely a lot of games, 100%. Man. That's a lot of games. So that's high praise on that victory. I'm glad that you shared that, Emilio. Okay. So let's move on to the final match before Fulham start up again against Wolves. It was the Crystal Palace victory. You and I have already talked about this, Tony, but I'm glad that we could finish up by talking about this match. I've watched it back several times, which is great. I have the ability. I recorded it. So what's great about this is that it's easy for, say, a Crystal Palace supporter, and I've listened to a lot of their podcasts after, just talk about all the injuries, the suspension. I get all that, right? But if the roles were reversed, we might be talking a little bit about it, but we would also be giving credit to the opposition. Fulham deserved the credit for going there and basically dominating the game, similar to Everton, similar to Brentford. This is almost like an extension of those two matches and just getting the job done. Absolutely getting the job done. And they should have won by a hell of a lot more. Again, you're on the road at Selhurst Park and you're playing like the home team, Tony. That's the way I look at it. So thoughts on the victory against Crystal Palace, and what does that tell you?
Yeah, so this is the game that I looked at and thought, right, in previous years when Fulham have had a really good result, and we saw it last year actually when, we came off a great result and then we had Burnley. And, they were struggling, bottom of the league. And then we ended up losing. And we're all back to, this is such a Fulhamish thing to do. And typical Fulham. That was a game that they could have easily have gone to and got beat. And in previous years, they probably would have. But this is where I think there's been a shift in the mentality and a shift in the quality of player that we now have. We've got winners in this team. We've got real winners, players that, will fight for the shirt, have got the quality. And yeah, look, Palace had a lot of players out, and that was definitely a factor. But you still can only beat what's put in front of you.
Yeah.
And Fulham did that. And Emil Smith-Rowe, for me, had his best game in a Fulham shirt. He was outstanding on the day. And that's the Emil Smith-Rowe that you want to be seeing, every week moving forward. And yeah, great result, clean sheet. I'm all about clean sheets. I love a clean sheet. And you know what? As I said, it's a shame the international break came when it did, because you want to be playing Wolves straight after that. But we'll see what happens.
Okay, my friend, I got some great comments that I'm just sharing as we do this show live. This has been great. Tony, we've gone for 45 minutes and it feels like we just started going, man. This has been wonderful. But coming up next, Tony and I are going to look forward and we're going to ask the question and talk about it. And if you're watching live, feel free to share your thoughts. What do Fulham need to do to get into Europe? What do they need to add in January? We're going to talk all about that coming up next. Okay, Tony. So you and I have talked about this a lot, and I'm one that I've said this to you several times. I don't want to accept mid-table. I'm done with accepting it. I'm going to hold the club responsible here and say, you know what? You need to be doing better than just mid-table, 13th, 10th, whatever. No, you need to be getting yourself into Europe, not just contending for Europe, getting yourself into Europe. A lot will tell that tale when we play those tough teams coming up in December. I get all that. But if we're projecting forward, what is needed in January to push on to a European spot? Not contending for one, getting us there and staying there. What do they need? And if you're watching live, feel free to share your thoughts on it. Because when you look at the roster, I think I know where the number one need is. But are there others as well? What do they need in January?
The first thing is squad quality depth, and by that I mean obviously we all know where we need where the one position that we need. But the problem is that every team in the Premier League and Europe is looking for the same player, right? A number 9 that can score goals. That's basically, we haven't replaced Mitrovic. We know that, and you're not going to replace him, because ultimately those centre forwards are very rare. Most of them are already at clubs, and if you're gonna buy one, it's going to cost you 60 million plus. Right. It's as simple as that. And I don't think the Khans are going to lay out that kind of dough to get a player in. So don't be surprised if they get a loan signing in, a loan forward in January, and that could be anything. I think that we need another combative midfield player in there, another box-to-box player that can add a bit of quality, get on the ball, do what Pereira does, but do it better. And especially when we haven't got the ball in it from a defensive point of view. And yeah, I don't think we need too much, is the honest truth. If we can keep the current group healthy and together, and make sure that we keep everyone as is, so we don't lose anyone, then if we can get those couple of players in those positions, I think it's a very, if we're still up there or thereabouts, then we've got a really good chance of pushing on and getting that top 6.
Okay, excellent stuff there, Tony. I'm going to share some comments. I'm going to share my thoughts. This is from Ross, a striker, Mitro style, and we are 7th. So Hale says we need a striker, maybe 2. Emma chimes in, need an out-and-out striker. I certainly understand that. Wayne says the exact same thing. It is a striker. So now here's one that you've also said, Callum Wilson on loan, which I'm not against, Tony. I'm not against that. Your thoughts? We've talked about this.
We have talked about it. Look, if Callum Wilson is fit and at the top, then he's definitely a viable option. But I don't know how fit he is. There's one player, and I mentioned it to you last week.
Bring it up
off the cuff, and
let's do it. Bring it up.
I'm going to throw it out there. People think I'm mad, but look, I genuinely believe, with the group of players that Silva has got together now, and where this player is in his current career now,
Marcus
Rashford would be an unbelievable fit for our team. I
I
really believe
totally
that.
agree. I
And
totally agree.
it's a shame that they've got their new manager coming in now, because I actually think his time at United's done. And it might be, the old
Yep.
story where the new manager comes in, revitalizes him, and suddenly you're going to see the Rashford of old. But I think he needs a change of scenery. I think he needs a new scene, a new start, a new beginning.
Yep.
I know that he's quite friendly with, some of the Fulham players
Right.
outside, and he would be, for me, a brilliant fit for that number 9 role. I really do. I think he would be brilliant for us.
Okay. And I'm totally on board. You're just throwing it out there. We're not hearing anything. Just looking at a player that needs a fresh start. And I'd be all for that. I just don't know if that could really come off, but I like where you're going on that. This is from Emilio before I share my thoughts. And I agree with Emilio on this. Need a backup keeper. He worries if something happens to Leno. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, listen, we are blessed to have Leno. He's one of the top 6 goalkeepers in the league, in my mind, without a shadow of a doubt. If anything happens to him, that could be a massive game changer for us. And he's absolutely right. We do need to get no offense, no disrespect to Bender. I'm sure I haven't seen enough of him, but he's not going to be the keeper that's going to keep you in fighting for Europe. That's for sure. And Leno, honestly, he is so underrated in my mind by fans, by people in general. He's class. He's absolute class.
Okay. And supporters are talking about this from Ross, and I saw Steve say the same thing. The wages would be a problem with Marcus Rashford. And that's true. He's on high wages, so that might be an issue. So I get where they're going on that. So I just want to just mention that. I do want to share this from Suhail, and this is funny because it's a good point. Because Wilson will get injured diving in the first game, and he does dive a lot. So that's just funny from Suhail. Okay, so I want to share my thoughts on January. Striker, backup, goalkeeper. I'm with those 2 positions. I'm also with you in midfield, but here's my thoughts on this. I want to get your thoughts on this. You and I have talked about this. He's done nothing wrong, but I think this player might want to play more. And I think if you upgraded the position and let this player go to another club that could use him, I think it could be a win-win. I think Fulham should sell Harrison Reed. I think they should sell Harrison Reed in January and upgrade the position. A number 8, bring in a number 8 that you think has more upside and younger than Harrison Reed, and let Harrison Reed find a club that he can play more than he is right now. Well, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a lot of it's going to come down to what Harrison Reed wants to do, I would imagine. He must be quite frustrated that he's not playing regularly, and I'm sure every player wants to play. I personally think he's still got a role to play within this squad.
Okay.
He may not be happy with that. I think if you get an upgrade, then you're going to have that problem again of how you're going to keep all these players happy and playing.
Okay.
And yeah, look, going back to the Rashford point, I think Steve is right about the wages 100%. No, we're not going to pay 350 grand, but a lot of that's going to come down to Rashford as well. If the manager makes it clear that he's not in his plans, then the player himself is going to have to think about taking a wage drop and thinking about a new path, and sometimes that does work out.
Sure.
But going back to your point, I think that I wouldn't like to see Harrison Reed go, because I still think he's got a role to play. And if we do get, we've been lucky so far, other than the Lukic injury, we've been quite injury free so far. But there is going to come a time where we will pick up knocks and players will get injured, especially coming into that period where there's a lot of games. And do we have the squad depth to keep us at a level? I don't think at the moment that we do. And obviously, Raul and Munez, they're not going to score you enough goals. They're just not. It's that simple. So that does need to be addressed, 100%.
Okay, so I definitely see your point on what we would call over here role player. That's what Harrison Reed is. Plays a role. We've had several over the years that I just love because I do like those types of players. And I do like Harrison Reed. I'm just trying to think of upgrading the position, bringing in another player, then someone probably has to go. And that's where I was going on that, Tony. But I'm not advocating him leaving. I'm just saying that if he wanted to go to play more and we could bring in an upgrade, it could be a win-win. But if he wants to stay and he is able to accept his role, because he's not going to be a starter, Tony, just like Kearney. I think Kearney's accepted his role. If Harrison Reed has accepted his role, then that's a different story, right? But I still agree with you regardless. I think they need help in midfield, central midfield. I agree with you on that. I think that's where they should be looking. I think that they are legitimately 2 to 3 players away from Fulham, not just knocking on the door, but breaking down a European spot. I think they're very close, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to remember how Fulham fans felt when Polinia left to join Bayern Munich. You know, it was like the clouds were falling out the sky. How are Fulham going to manage without him? You know, and then it was the same with Mitrovic. But actually, it's been a blessing in disguise, because what's happened is other players have had to step up, and actually the players we've brought in have actually complemented the group. So actually, I don't feel we miss him at all. I don't turn up to any game thinking, "Oh, I wish Polinia was here today. I really wish he was playing." We don't, and that says a lot about
crazy.
where we are at the moment. So look, I think Silva needs to strengthen in January, definitely. But it's not just buying, getting players in, whether it's loan or play. It's getting the right type of player in that's going to complement the group that we've got. And if he can get that right, then we can definitely push on. There's no question about it. But it's got to be the right type of player, not just any player.
I'm there with you. Okay, this is from Steve Reynolds. It's going back to Jedi. How long before Jedi leaves, we have to start looking? Steve, I agree with you that we need to start looking. But as Tony and I have already said, if I'm Fulham, I don't sell them in January unless it's crazy money that you just can't say no to. They need to continually build. So if I'm the Cons, and I'll say it right now, and if they're listening to this show, do not sell Jedi. I can't say it strong enough. Please don't sell him, because the teams that sell their best players, they don't build anything. They basically stay where they are. They might get a little bit better. Look at Brighton. They're doing great, right? But are Brighton ever going to be where maybe they could be if they actually kept all their players, Tony? Maybe they would be fighting for getting into a Champions League spot. They're not the way that they do business. There's no way. They can be in Europe. They'll be out of Europe. They'll go back and forth. We talk about, a yo-yo club. In a way, Brighton are a yo-yo club. They're just a yo-yo club between top 7, top 10. They're just going back and forth because they keep losing players. I don't want Fulham to be that team anymore, Tony. I'm sick of it. I know it's the bigger clubs poached the smaller clubs. I get all that. But we have one of the richest owners in the world. And he, again, financially, he can fight this off. I believe that. And he should be holding on to his best players. And the Polina thing's a little bit different. His dream team, I get all that. And the Mitrovic thing, he basically forced Fulham's hand. But they should be playing basically with strength right now and not selling their best players, Tony. I'm sorry. I'm not going to change my mind on that. And I've had my issues with Jedi. But Jedi is not someone that I would be selling in January, and I wouldn't sell him at all unless you're getting silly money for him this summer. Why would you do that? I don't care. It's like I love these players, but I care about Fulham. If his dream is someday to play in the Champions League, that's great. But again, that's not my problem. My problem is keeping Fulham as good as that they can be. So I would love to see our players progress. Fine. But I'd rather see them do it with Fulham than do it with Bayern Munich. I'm going to say it right now, that you're seeing with Paulinho, who is getting a chance to play right now because there's an injury. He wasn't playing. He was not playing. And you got Mitro going where he went. And, listen, he's done a lot for Fulham Football Club, but I'm going to say it right now. He is a me player, and I want a team player, and I would rather have Jimenez right now than Mitro, and I'm going to say that right now, Tony. I'm sorry, that's just me.
Look, it's not rocket science, Russ. You bring in better, stronger players, you're going to improve your position in the league. Fulham so far brought well in the summer. They upgraded on players. They got rid of players that were quite not quite up to it. lovely players, but just not quite up to the level.
Yep.
We've got players now that are up to the level, and it's no fluke that we, are winning the games that we're winning and playing the football that we're playing. They're better players. It's as simple as that. If you get to January, our back four are building a really good rapport, good
That's
understanding.
Right.
You take Robinson out of that, there isn't a player that can replace him. There isn't a player on the planet that can replace what he does, what he brings. Look, I still think he has flaws, Russ. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's the greatest footballer. I don't think he's technically strong, but he is an athlete. He works incredibly hard. He's improving in certain areas. His crossing's got better. His recovery has improved. All these things are improvements, but that has come under Silver's team and his coaches. And he can go to Liverpool, but we all know how that story sometimes plays out. It doesn't always work out the way that you think it is.
No, and Ross,
I just don't see Jedi going in January. I just don't see the point. I just can't see it.
Right, and he's a perfect fit for Marco's system, and that's the whole thing. Just to wrap up the show, the reason why I wanted to end by talking about what can Fulham do to get a European spot is that when you look at it, that's why I wanted to focus on January. If we're honest with ourselves, we talked about the weaknesses: backup goalkeeper, and another striker and a midfielder. That's it. That's it, Tony. And yes, we've been fortunate with injuries, and injuries will come, but I think we have the depth. If we deal with an injury at a winger, we've got depth. If we deal with an injury in central midfield, we have depth. Center backs, I think we actually have depth. The one position where we might struggle might be left back if Jedi goes down. We still have Ryan Sessegnon. It's not terrible. And on the right side, you got Castagna, who I actually want to be starting over Kenny Tete. Yes, I said that. Just because he's my preference, but Tete is playing out of his mind. He's playing out of his mind. And oh, by the way, I think competition is a reason why he's playing out of his mind. And I think that's what's driving all these players. There's so much competition for positions right now. This team has a ton of depth right now. They just need a few more quality pieces to go along with what they have, Tony. And I think we're going to have an incredible season. That's how I'm going to end the show. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think Ross is right there about the grass isn't always greener, and players have found that out in time. I think Jedi's happy, he's settled. I think he sees the season out, because if we can scrape into Europe, he stays. I don't see why he would want to leave unless Liverpool come in with a ridiculous offer or another team, and that's them. But at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, keep the current group that we've got, keep it good, keep it healthy. Add to it with one or two players in January, but make sure that they're the right quality, the right players, which I'm sure Silver will be doing, his due diligence now, and he'll be looking at players. He'll have scouts out there looking all over the place, and they'll be focusing on that. And for me, getting through December and making sure that we perform with some big games coming up. After the Wolves game, it's tough.
Hard.
We've got Brighton. Sorry, we've got Tottenham, we got Brighton, we got Arsenal, we got Liverpool. We got some tough games coming up. And for me, December is going to be, see where we're going to fall in terms of, going into January.
Totally agree. I'm going to end with Scott Tanfield from Friends of Fulham. He says, we don't find enough gems like Robinson. He was only 1.5 million from Wigan. He's right. The key is to find the next Robinson and keep that momentum going. I agree with Scott on that, Tony. But again, I'm still not selling Jedi. But I am looking for the replacement. I'm with Scott on that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, there are some really good players knocking around in the Championship League One. There's no question about it. And Scott's absolutely bang on. We've also got an unbelievable academy with players coming through left, right, and centre. But the fact of the matter is, they've got to be at the level to come into the Premier League and hit the ground running, and that's not always easy, as you know. So yeah, I'm sure they'll be looking. I'm sure they've got players in mind, but yeah, finding them is another thing, and converting them into Premier League footballers is a whole different ball game as well.
Okay, let's see. Keep on getting good questions. This is our friend Emilio, who unfortunately could not join us tonight, but he wants to chime in. Tony, let's rate top 3 players this season. Tough question.
God, right. Yeah. For me, the top 3 at the moment would be Iwobi, Robinson, and Leno.
Oh, okay. So Leno would be number one, or are we going in reverse?
They're just, I mean, for me at the moment, Iwobi is player of the season just
Okay.
because of his consistency. Then I'd have
Okay.
Robinson and then Leno.
Okay.
They would be my top three at the moment.
Okay. Emilio, I'm going to play the game too. I'm going to put Iwobi in there and Leno, and I will also add, even though he's not playing right now, Sasa Lukic. I'm going to put Sasa Lukic in there. I think he has been very good. I think he's been excellent. He's just unfortunately been injured. When he was playing, he was a top player for Fulham, but I think Iwobi has been a huge key. I'm glad that we're focusing
What's
on
Emilio's?
Emilio, if you get a chance, share your top three. I've got a bunch coming in. Every time I want to end the show, we got more people chiming in. This is from Colm Bugler. Iwobi, Lukic, Robinson, and Black, White, and Fred says the same exact thing. Iwobi, Lukic, Robinson. Very interesting. I'm glad that people are agreeing with me with Lukic. Don't forget about Sasa Lukic, Tony. Here we are. We'll end with Emilio's thoughts. Iwobi, Jedi, and Tete. Wow. But that just tells you how
Tete's
great.
Been excellent. He has been excellent. He has been excellent. Look, the great thing is that all the players that are mentioned, that's why we're doing so well, is because the group is playing well. And that's what you want. You want, 7 out of your 11 or 8 out of your 11 playing at the highest level and playing well. And that says a lot.
Yeah. No, very good. Tony, great show. I think we could keep going for probably another couple hours, but we really should wrap this up. We really should. So, Tony, any final thoughts before we go?
No, let's just hope that we turn up on Saturday against Wolves and get the job done.
Okay, I agree with that. This is from our friend Russ. Thank you for the kind words. And I just want to thank everyone that actually watched this show and others that will listen afterwards. I do want to mention before we go, if you haven't checked out the Cottage Talk Patreon page, please do check it out. I'm putting up some really good stuff up there. Tony and I really enjoy doing the player rating show, and we do positively and negatively after a match. I think it's great to really talk about the players and give them a rating. Then we also rate, by the way, Marco as well. So he might be a genius, but again, there are times where we're going to criticize him too. He deserves criticism. Every player and manager deserves criticism, and we give them praise when they deserve it as well. If you haven't checked it out, please do check it out. There are some free shows on there. And if you like what you see, become a paid member. That would be great. I would certainly appreciate that. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. He's Tony Gold. I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.